Boris Said will be officially making his NASCAR Cup Series return at Circuit of the Americas. Jeff Gordon is joined the Fox Sports booth at Atlanta, and the Phoenix TV ratings have come out. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start off with the paint schemes and sponsorship news for this weekend and the next couple of weeks. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're going to go ahead and take a look at is Sage Karam's 2022 The Driveway Company scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This will be the first race that Sage Karam is racing with Alpha Prime Racing this season. This paint scheme looks really good in my opinion. They did a really good job on it. I love the colors on it. They did a really awesome job. I love it, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2022 Exalted It Has to Be Nelly scheme that we received this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. They did a great job on this paint scheme. It's very similar to the old Exalted schemes. Of course, it's also got the sponsorship that's being sponsoring this weekend. Overall, I think it's really awesome to see, and I'm very happy to see that they are sponsoring this weekend here at Atlanta. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2022 Door Bumper Clear scheme that we're going to see at Dover International Speedway. It was announced on the Door Bumper Clear podcast last night that they will be sponsoring Justin Allgaier. I love this paint scheme a lot. They did a great job on it. I'm very happy to see that Door Bumper Clear is joining. I know a lot of people have their own controversial opinions on the Door Bumper Clear podcast, but overall, I think it's really awesome that Door Bumper Clear is going to sponsor this weekend, and not this weekend, but later this year at Phoenix. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brandon Jones' 2022 Penn Air Myers Menard scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Atlanta. This paint scheme is alright in my opinion. It's obviously the usual typical Menard schemes with changes on the front. This paint scheme is alright, but it's cool to see that they are sponsoring this weekend here at Atlanta. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2022 Skittles scheme that we're going to see next weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Yes, the lime is back. This paint scheme is absolutely amazing. I love the Skittles on the front of the car. Numbers in a really good position. I've usually been a big fan of the Skittles schemes. This one's no exception. Overall, they did a really awesome and excellent job with this paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack next weekend at COTA. And the final paint scheme we are taking a look at is Cole Custer's 2022 Dixie Vodka scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Atlanta, and I believe later this year at Homestead as well. I love this. Well, I'm a decent paint scheme in my opinion. It's not my favorite one I've seen so far, but I think it's overall a very decent paint scheme. They did a very solid job on it, and overall, I'm looking forward to seeing the racetrack. Hopefully, we'll see some good runs out of it, and hopefully, they'll do good this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about John Wayne Service Company. As John Wayne Service Company is going to sponsor Jeb Burton at both Texas races this season. Jeb Burton continues to get a bunch of different sponsors. It seems like he's got sponsors every single week. I think he's going to have a new one, or one of his old sponsors that's sponsored this weekend in Atlanta. But it's really cool to see that another company is coming in and stepping up to the plate, and they are going to be sponsoring him this weekend. I think that's really exciting news, and cool to see that John Wayne Service Company is sponsoring Jeb Burton at both Texas races. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Worldwide Technology Raceway, as their Cup title sponsor has been officially revealed, and the Cup title sponsor is Enjoy Illinois 300. I believe Enjoy Illinois has sponsored some of the Xfinity Series races in the past, some of the Truck Series races, and Enjoy Illinois will be sponsoring. It would have been really cool if like a St. Louis company or like Bob Marito was sponsored, since Bob Marito does have a really big initiative when it comes to Worldwide Technology Raceway, but it's not a major shock to me that it's not. That being said, though, I do like the title sponsor name, and good to see that Enjoy Illinois is sponsoring the Gateway race. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Dover Xfinity Series race, as their title sponsor was also revealed. It's going to be called the A-Game 200. A-Game has had a sponsorship in NASCAR in the past. As a matter of fact, they've sponsored RSS Racing with Jason White in the past. We don't know when Jason White will ever come back, so he hasn't raced this year. But it's really cool to see the A-Game is stepping up, and they are going to be sponsoring the Dover NASCAR Xfinity Series race. I think that's really awesome and pretty cool, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Quick Trip, as it was announced yesterday that they announced that Sunday's race will be the final Cup race that they will be sponsoring at Atlanta Motor Speedway. QuikTrip has been sponsoring basically Atlanta, I think, since around 2014 or 2015. This is the 8th race in a row that they have sponsored, and QuikTrip will no longer be sponsored by the Folds of Honor race. Does not shock me. I don't know if they're getting a major return on investment. That's probably a major reason why they decided to go ahead and stop sponsoring. So I know a lot of people are definitely disappointed and not happy about that, but overall, it is what it is in regards to that. And it definitely is unfortunate that QuikTrip is not going to be sponsored after this, but it is what it is, and it sucks that they're dropping off, but it is what it is. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Jeff Gluck poll that just got revealed here a few minutes ago. As he reported just a few minutes ago that his Jeff Gluck poll for Phoenix got a 70% yes. This is so far the lowest rated race. Is the first time in 6-7 races the race had got under 80% on the Jeff Gluck poll. But it's, I think, one of the highest Phoenix races. And I'll be real, I thought the Phoenix race was okay this weekend, but it wasn't anything spectacular. It wasn't really anything special. I think it was the worst race I've seen so far with the Next Gen era. That does not mean the Next Gen races have absolutely been really terrible. It's just, and this race wasn't terrible. It's just that this race did not bring up amazing standards for the events. It is unfortunate, though, the race wasn't as good, but that is the Jeff Gluck poll for this past weekend at Phoenix. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Blake Shelton. As it was just announced that Blake Shelton is going to perform a 1-hour concert before the All-Star race at Texas Motor Speedway. Blake Shelton is one of the biggest personalities in country music. He's also one of the biggest country singers out there today, and also has been on The Voice for, I think, for basically 20 to 21 seasons. For the last, I think, 12 years, he has been on The Voice, and now he'll be performing a 1-hour concert. Blake Shelton's definitely a person who's really had a big career resurgence in the last 10 years, and it's pretty cool that he's going to be performing. I know a lot of people are not a big fan of country music singers. I know I've said that we shouldn't have country music singers performing, but at the same time, he is a pretty big personality, so it is not a major surprise to me that they've gone ahead and added him, and they've gone ahead and done so. Overall, in my opinion, that is the situation, and Blake Shelton will be performing a pre-race concert. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kyle Larson. As this past weekend at Tulare, while Kyle Larson's Cup Series race did not go well, Kyle Larson was able to win the World of Outlaws race at Tulare Speedway on Saturday night. This was his 25th career World of Outlaws victory. He is the third fastest driver to pick up 25 career wins. I think Steve Kinser's one of them. I don't remember the other driver got 25 career wins, but he is the third fastest person to get 25 career World of Outlaws victories. Kyle Larson continues to prove why he's one of the best in World America, in the United States, and basically in the world, and he continues to prove that. So overall, very, very exciting news, and glad to see that Kyle Larson got that victory. He absolutely deserved it, and again, another victory for Kyle Larson. That's huge and pretty cool to see that Kyle Larson was able to pick up that victory. I think it's really, really exciting. Glad to see that Kyle Larson picked up that victory. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, is we're going to talk about Chase Briscoe a couple times. We'll first talk about Chase Briscoe as he made history. Chase Briscoe became the 200th winner in NASCAR Cup Series history. It basically took from win 1 to win 100. Mario Andretti was actually the 100th winner in NASCAR. Basically took almost 55 years to get to the next 100 winners. But like I said, Chase Briscoe became the 200th official winner in NASCAR Cup Series history. There's been a lot of drivers that have been really, really close to picking up wins. Guys like Laurice Hezemans and Tyler Reddick are going to join him. But I think a lot of it is, one, I think the Cup Series is much more tougher than it used to be in 1967, and also used to have 36 races in more than 36 races in a season. You had sometimes 50 to 60 races in a season where you could have a lot of drivers go out and win. So overall, that's pretty cool that Chase Briscoe was the 200th winner in NASCAR Cup Series history. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about drivers under 30. Now, this is another interesting fact. Drivers under the age of 30 have won the last 10 Cup Series races. Now, of course, Kyle Larson is going to turn 30 in July. But like I mentioned, the last 10 Cup Series races have been won by drivers under the age of 30. It starts off Bubba Wallace at Talladega, and Kyle Larson's won, I think, 6. I think he's won 6 of those races in the last 10. Alex Bowman's gotten a couple of victories in there. Austin Cindric's won one, and also Chase Briscoe has scored the victory. I think this is also a really good youth movement that's happening in NASCAR. Another interesting fact is no driver has won all the points paying races so far, no driver over the age of 30 has won in Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series. I think one thing that this shows is that there is a big movement happening in the NASCAR world right now, and I think it's really awesome to see that drivers under the age of 30 continue to pick up victories in the sport. Overall, I think that's some really, really exciting news. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kurt Busch. Now, Kurt Busch was able to finish in the top 5 at Phoenix this past weekend. This is only the second time since 1973 that the 45 car has finished in the top 5. You want to guess the last time that happened? Kyle Petty in 2007 in the Coke 600 when we had that fuel mileage race. Now, I do expect that Kurt Busch is going to get quite a few more top 5s, and that 45 is going to get a lot more top 5s this season. But I'm not sure, though, because, again, the Joe Gibbs Racing and Twitter have absolutely struggled. I think that's a pretty cool and interesting tidbit, though, that Kurt Busch has basically got the 45 only their second top 5 in the last, basically, 50 seasons. That's absolutely crazy. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Tyler Reddick and Laurice Hezemans. Now, after the race was over, they actually talked and basically gestured about the racing that they put on, and they talked about what they were going to do on the late race restarts. Basically had a really good conversation about that, and they did say that they were going to race him basically hard, but they were going to race him very, very fair against Chase Briscoe. These two guys have been really, really happy. You look at the speed that both these guys have had, especially at the start of the season. Both Laurice Hezemans and Tyler Reddick have been two of the top, 10 fastest drivers all season long. And I think both those guys are going to win races. But their conversation, I thought, was really, really funny, especially when Tyler Reddick came up and talked to him. I thought it was a really, really, overall, very, very funny conversation. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Anand Mahindra. Anand Mahindra, who basically is the owner and CEO of Mahindra Tractors, he basically was celebrating the win on Twitter, talking about that he's got a great partnership with Chase Briscoe and Stewart Racing, and congratulate Chase Briscoe on picking up the victory. Of course, like I mentioned, Chase Briscoe picked up his first NASCAR Cup Series victory this past weekend at Phoenix, and it's cool to see that the CEO really is involved, and this means that Chase Briscoe's long-term future is really, really set with the team, considering Mahindra is really, really happy and excited that he was able to pick up the victory. Overall, really, really exciting news, and I'm glad to see that the CEO of the company is really, really happy. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about traction compound. Now, of course, this past weekend in Phoenix, there was traction compound that was applied, and there's been a lot of question in regards to the future of traction compound. Well, Bob Pockrass reported on Friday that there will not be any traction compound for several upcoming races in the season. The next one likely is going to be Dover, but these are the races that are upcoming that will not have traction compound: Atlanta, Coda, Richmond, Martinsville, Bristol Dirt, and Talladega. Thank God, because I am not a big fan of trash compound or resin. Some tracks it works with resin, other tracks not so much. Trash compound can provide decent racing at points, but also can provide some not so great decent racing, and it can become a one-group track. So very happy to see that there's not going to be much trash compound coming in the near future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the ARCA Phoenix race. As we're going to talk about this race for one reason and one reason only, and that's because who won the race. So, Taylor Gray picked up the victory at Phoenix. It was overall a pretty decent race at Phoenix. In my opinion, it was very difficult to pass at Phoenix, but it was a pretty okay race in my opinion. The race would be dominated by guys like Taylor Gray and Daniel Dye and Sammy Smith. On the last restart race, Taylor Gray was able to come around the corner and pick up the victory. Now, the reason this race is so significant and so important is because of the impacts of this race. Steven Satsa was a hauler driver for DJR Racing. Unfortunately, was killed in a wreck and a crash last week in a very, very bad accident in Longview, Texas. So it was, I think, really, really awesome that he's able to pick up that victory, and I think it was a very, very emotional win for the team and a very happy moment for the team. They were able to win in bittersweet moments. So overall, that was cool to see, and that was who won the race. That Taylor Gray picked up also his first career ARCA victory, by the way, main ARCA victory. So huge congratulations to DJR Racing. It's good to see that they were able to pick up that victory. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Phoenix Cup race, as it was reported on Sunday for the green flag drop that the Phoenix Cup race was able to sell out. That is huge. There have been a lot of really, really strong crowds for these races so far in the 2022 season. And the fact that the Phoenix Cup race is continuing that trend of being able to sell out, I think is absolutely amazing. The fact that the Phoenix Cup race is able to pick up a sellout crowd. And you could tell that there was a lot of energy around the event. Again, all the crowds so far this year at these races have been amazing and absolutely incredible. So I think it's really, really awesome to see that the Phoenix Cup race was able to sell out this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Tony Stewart Racing. As Tony Stewart Racing, while they did pick up the victory with Stewart-Haas Racing in the Cup Series, Tony Stewart Racing was also able to pick up a big victory, as Mahindra was able to win the Funny Car event here at the Gator Nationals, with picking up Tony Stewart Racing's first ever NHRA victory. NHRA, basically Tony Stewart Racing joined NHRA this year with Leah Pruitt. We've been seeing with Top Fuel and Matt Hagan driving the funny cars. Two of the best in basically Dodge's category. And really, really big victory for Tony Stewart Racing. They've had a huge weekend as a whole. And the fact that they were able to pick up the victory right there with Tony Stewart Racing, I think is absolutely awesome. And congratulations to them on picking up the victory. And really awesome that Matt Hagan was able to give Tony Stewart Racing their first ever NHRA victory. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Worldwide Technology Raceway length for the Cup race. And there's been a lot of questions how long this race is going to be. Well, since the Cup race is going to be a 300-mile race, it's going to be a 240-lap race at Worldwide Technology Raceway. And the biggest reason is, of course, Gateway is 1.25 miles. And then, of course, you have to divide 300 by 1.25, and then you get 240. So it's going to be a pretty long race at Worldwide Technology Raceway. This race is going to be a pretty decent long race. I expect it to probably be a 3 to 3.5 hour long race with how many issues, and you see how many cars having issues through these races, except this past weekend at Phoenix. I do expect the race to be pretty long. I'm going to be out there, by the way, so if you do see me at the track, come out and say hi. But overall, that is going to be the length for the Worldwide Technology Raceway race coming up here. It's pretty good length in my opinion. I'm glad to see that that is what the length is going to be for Worldwide Technology Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about ASA. Now, this is reported by NASCAR Chasm, and he basically posted, it seems like NASCAR is trying the process of getting the trademark for the ASA Racing name. Now, there's been a lot of theories around the ASA Racing name in regards to the future of that. Remember, ASA has not been around for a couple years now, and a lot of people are thinking that it's going to be just bringing back the overall short track racing product. My theory around ASA Racing is I think that this is going to be the all-electric series that's been rumored. We've talked about this on the channel, I think, once or twice. Basically, NASCAR is trying to get basically an all-electric series. And I think that ASA could be the way that they could get that series. So I think that is really what's going on, and I think that all-electric series is where ASA is going to go to. So overall, really, really exciting news as a whole. I hope it does get approved. Hope the trademark does come out, and that seems like what's going on with ASA. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Goodyear tire test. Today, there is a Goodyear tire test that is going on, and 3 drivers are at the Goodyear tire test. Danny Hamlin, who's doing it for Toyota, Kevin Harvick, who's doing it for Ford, and Kyle Larson for Chevy, are doing a tire test at Darlington Raceway. It seems like they're doing this tire test to kind of see how tires are going to work at Darlington, considering this track is much older. It's got a much more older surface and a track that wears out tires very, very quickly. They're trying to find out how these tires are going to last at Darlington Raceway. This also could be a good thing to help with the flat tire situation we're going to talk about here very, very shortly. So overall, that is the situation, and there's a Goodyear tire test that is going on today at Darlington Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're now, speaking of which, talking about the flat tire situation. Brad Moran was on NASCAR Series Sim NASCAR Radio earlier today, and he says that radio officials and teams have worked on a solution for flat tires. They're not planning to make any changes because it could affect the racing. That, I think, makes a ton of sense. Again, there's been one of the biggest things, if you've been following NASCAR very, very closely, especially over the last couple weeks, there's been a big situation with flat tires where drivers have had a very difficult time with the flat tire situation, where teams have been basically getting beached and stuck if you have 2 flat tires. But it seems like these flat tires are these teams are making some adjustments and some changes to those flat tires, and they're able to bring it back to pit road. And I do agree here that they don't want to affect the racing. So it seems like they're not wanting to affect the racing. Another tidbit that he brought up is that competition cautions are still going to be continuing to be a thing because there's not much practice time. Well, if you want to fix this problem and you don't want competition cautions because people have been complaining about them, guess what? Give them more practice time. I've been saying this for a long time. There's not enough practice on the circuit. They need to give these teams a little bit more practice time, in my opinion. So we'll have to wait and see what happens if they get more practice time. But that situation with the flat tires, and it seems like they're not going to make any changes to it because, again, they don't want to overall affect the racing. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick was on Sirius XM NASCAR radio yesterday, and he says that the leg numbness issues that he feels have been fixed. Basically, it feels like the issues have been fixed. If you've been following the story around Tyler Reddick when it comes to the leg numbness issues and the leg numbness situation, Tyler Reddick has had at Auto Club, I think it was right or left leg that went numb. Then they tried to make a change at Las Vegas, and then both legs went numb. And then he made a change to the floorboard, and it seems like the leg numbness issues have overall been fixed, he feels like. That's a really good news. Again, they basically made some changes. They're trying to fix that problem. And you don't want to, your legs go numb, especially at tracks where heavy braking, especially at a track like COTA or these other upcoming tracks where you're going to need to basically have your legs functioning and ready to go. So overall, that's a big thumbs up to me that it seems like it's good that they've been able to fix the leg numbness issues. I think if that would have been a much bigger issue, now would have continued on, that could have been a much bigger problem. But it does seem like those lug nut issues have been fixed, and those leg numbness issues have been fixed. I think that's a really, really good thing. To be perfectly honest with you, glad to see there's no more issues around that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Todd Parrott. As we haven't really talked much about Todd Parrott in the last couple of days, but Todd Parrott, of course, most of you don't know, was basically in the hospital, basically due to, I think, heart complications. Well, it's been reported, and Bob Fox reported this on Saturday. He spoke to Todd Parrott, and he says that Todd Parrott continues to improve, and his health is continuing to improve. This is really, really good news. Of course, Todd Parrott is a legendary crew chief. He's crew chief for multiple teams, including the Levine Family Racing. He's also crew chief for Dale Jarrett back in the day, and has been doing a lot of crew chiefing work. Hopefully, Todd Parrott can get better and get back to the racetrack really, really soon. I do hope that he continues to improve, and we're wishing him a well and speedy recovery for Todd Parrott. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Colton Herta. As it was announced on Friday that Colton Herta has joined the testing program for McLaren, basically from the 2021 group. He'll be joining the McLaren testing program here in 2022. We'll be able to get some practice sessions in this year with Formula One. A lot of people don't know this, but there's been a lot of talk about the Andretti F1 program and how is Colton Herta going to get his license points, super license points. Well, one of your ways you can get your super license points, along with doing really good at IndyCar, is if you do some testing in Formula One. You can get some major super license points. I think you can get 1 or 2 super license points in Formula One. So that's why Colton Herta is joining the McLaren program. Remember, there's a lot of talk right now that Andretti F1 is going to be going to Formula One here in the next couple of years. We're still waiting on the approval process from that. But we're expecting that it will get approved in the future, and we'll see another Formula One team. And if it does get approved, Colton Herta is absolutely going to go, because remember, Colton Herta was supposed to go to Formula One this year if they were able to acquire the Alfa Romeo branding. So I think it's really, really cool to see that Colton Herta is joining Formula One. Not joining Formula One. He's basically joined a testing program for McLaren's Formula One program. I think it's important that he join it, and really, really awesome to see that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the KRC lug nut controversy. Now, for those of you who have been following the story around the KRC lug nuts, Zane Smith basically got disqualified after the Truck Series race at Las Vegas. And basically, he showed on Twitter about they've been getting legal and illegal lug nuts, and it looks like that they have been all getting illegal lug nuts from KRC. Well, some of them. Multiple teams have been coming out saying it seems like that they're getting bad lug nuts. Colin Firm put a post out on Twitter showing that they did 250 lug nuts, and only 57 of them, I think he said, were legal lug nuts. It seems like that the company is giving them bad lug nuts, and if you have unthreaded lug nuts and threaded lug nuts, it seems like that you are going to get disqualified from NASCAR. This is an issue that NASCAR needs to address, and I hope it does get addressed here in the future. But this, again, they're being all sent bad lug nuts. It's not just Zane Smith's team that's gotten this. Like I mentioned with Colin Fern's team, basically Brandonville Motorsports seems like they've had this issue. It seems like a lot of teams are having this problem, and this definitely is a situation that needs to be addressed, and hopefully NASCAR will find a way to address this lug nut problem, but it is an issue that does need to be addressed going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chris Hacker. As Chris Hacker is going to drive the 33 for Rayan Brothers Racing this season at Atlanta and Texas Motor Speedway with dull dirt on the car. Chris Hacker has made a couple starts for the Rayan Brothers organization. Has also driven for Nice Motorsports last year and has made a couple of starts. And he's had some good runs, but also some not really that good of runs in the past. Now, I'm not really expecting Chris Hacker to be really fast, to be honest with you. And, of course, he's going to have to, well, he doesn't have to qualify in Atlanta because there's only 36 cars that are going to be attempting to qualify in, so he's locked into the event regardless. Now, Chris Hacker, I expect that he will probably not run very well. I could be wrong. He could have good speed, but I'm not expecting much from Chris Hacker. But it's good to see that Chris Hacker is getting another opportunity to race. And, again, I do hope that Chris Hacker can do really well with the Rayan Brothers organization here in those couple races. Like I said, Dowler stepping up and sponsoring, and I hope that he will have some good runs here. So I think it'd be awesome if he was able to do really well. So good luck to Chris Hacker here this weekend here. Hopefully he will do really well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Dylan Bassett. As Dylan Bassett is going to drive the 77 for Bassett Racing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This will be the second race that Bassett Racing is going to be attempting to make it in. There are 43 entries that are going to be qualifying in, so hopefully Bassett Racing can have a lot more speed. Now, they are planning to attempt to run a ton of races this year. This, like I said, the second race that Bassett Racing is looking to get in. Now, Dylan Bassett has had some really impressive performances when he's driven for other organizations. So I'm not sure how he's going to do this weekend. Now, again, I've not really seen much speed out of the Bassett Racing group. So they're going to have to hopefully have a lot of speed. I hope they can come in and do really well. And hopefully Bassett Racing can be able to make it into this weekend here at Atlanta. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Laurice Hezemans. As Laurice Hezemans is going to be driving a 38 for RSS Racing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This has got me really pumped up. Laurice Hezemans, of course, is a Whelen Euro Series champion, I believe, from 2020. And the guy has a ton of talent. Yes, I know that he's not been able to qualify in for Phoenix, but Rayan Brothers organization is not that fast. And I think that this is a really good opportunity for him. I think that he will have a really good chance of qualifying. And that 38 car qualified really well. If Parker Retzlaff, who made his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut, he qualified very well. So I really hope that Laurice Hezemans can do really good in this car. I think he'll be able to easily qualify in. And I think if he makes it in, I think he's got a shot for a top 20. So I do hope that Laurice Hezemans does get into the event. And good luck to Laurice Hezemans as he'll be driving this weekend here at Phoenix. He will be driving this weekend at Atlanta. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain. As Ross Chastain is going to drive the 41 for Nice Motorsports this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway in a fifth Nice Motorsports truck. Of course, Nice Motorsports, like I said, is going to have 5 trucks this weekend, and this will be Ross Chastain's first race he will be running this season. Ross Chastain, of course, coming off two really strong runs in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think he absolutely deserves another opportunity to run the Truck Series and contend in that series. I think that Ross Chastain, in my opinion, is going to do really well. I think he's going to be a contender. I know that Nice Motorsports, again, 5 trucks is a lot for Nice Motorsports, and of course, he's locked in the event regardless, but I think that Ross Chastain is going to be able to contend for the victory overall. I think he deserves the opportunity. I'm very happy to see this, and I'm very glad to see that Ross Chastain will be driving for Nice Motorsports. He's got a really nice looking truck, by the way, and I do hope that he will do really well. Good luck to Ross Chastain. I hope that he will do very well this weekend here at Atlanta. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Kurt Busch. Now, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and it was reported by John Haberlin initially that we thought that Kurt Busch was going to be doing racing at COTA and Talladega. Well, Kurt Busch clarified that he will not be racing in the Xfinity Series races at COTA and Talladega, and he said that they will be commentating those races on FS1. So we know that Kurt Busch will be in the Fox Sports booth at COTA and Talladega. Now, John Haberlin apologized, and Kurt Busch then said, "Is that you?" And then Kurt Busch basically gave him a fist bump, saying, "It's all good. We all make mistakes, man." Look, it would have been really awesome to see Kurt Busch going back into racing. We all thought that he was going to be coming back to race. But in my opinion, Kurt Busch is also going to do a good job in the Fox Sports booth and Xfinity. I think he's done a good job in the Truck Series booth. And like I said, I told John on Twitter, and I said, we all make mistakes, man. Things happen, and we all make mistakes. And we can all learn from them and stuff, but at the same time, we all make mistakes in the sport. I've done it many times as someone who's reported on Twitter and stuff. I made a lot of mistakes in my time as well. But again, it would have been really awesome for him to race in the Xfinity. But again, I don't blame him for not wanting to race in Xfinity. There's a lot of other things that he could do. And again, of course, he might maybe in the future go back to Xfinity, but as it looks like he's not going to go back to Xfinity right now. But it is what it is, and he will not be racing, though. He will not be racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at those respective races. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about JJ Yeley. As JJ Yeley is going to drive the 55 for MBM Motorsports at Talladega. Now, we'll talk about another MBM Motorsports for in just a little bit, but this will be the second time that the 55 car will be attempting to make the NASCAR Cup Series, as the 55 car attempted to make the Daytona 500, and unfortunately both the MBM cars did not make the Daytona 500 in 2022. Now, most likely they may have to qualify their win, but I'm not sure if they're going to be able to have to qualify their way in, but there's not going to be duels and stuff that will be able to affect the team's opportunity to make it into the show. JJ Yeley, of course, is going to be driving full-time for MBM Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, so that makes a ton of sense why he's going to be driving in this car for MBM at Talladega. That being said, though, hopefully he can make it as I think MBM could actually be really, really competitive. Overall, very, very exciting news that MBM is going to be showing up once again. And at least it's good to see at least you're going to have to have a few races on their schedule. There was a lot of talk they weren't even going to show up for the rest of the season. So overall, very, very exciting news. And I'm glad to see that JJ will be driving in the 55 for MBM Motorsports. Really exciting news. And I'm glad to see that they are returning. Really, really exciting news, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Alex Bowman and Kyle Busch once again. Now, Alex Bowman spoke to the media on Saturday in regards to Alex Bowman, their situation from last week at Vegas, and he says that he appreciated text from Kyle Busch, but he didn't believe what Kyle said on the in-car radio was really that big of a deal, and he feels like the media really blew that up. And I really entirely agree with Alex Bowman right here. Kyle Busch was just frustrated. Basically, Kyle Busch is a sore loser. Let's be real. Kyle Busch is someone that does not like losing, and he hates losing, and he wants to go out there and win these races. And I really don't entirely blame Kyle Busch for being upset, because he was really close to picking up his first victory since Pocono last year, and then that caution came out with 3 laps to go and took him out of that opportunity. And Kyle Busch did apologize and basically said that I was not meaning to be mad at you. I was just mad at a situation I was not able to go out and win. Like I said, Kyle Busch is a sore loser, and he wants to go out and win races. And Alex Bowman, he feels like he appreciated it. They had a fun t-shirt war right there. Both of them had a really good time, and they were jokingly and having a lot of fun. So overall, it's a good thing that Kyle Busch and Alex Bowman are on good terms. Seemed like there was really no beef and issues between the two, and it's good to see they're both on really, really good terms, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Atlanta reconfiguration. And they're going to split this up into 2 parts in this video. Let's first talk about the changes in regards to Atlanta Motor Speedway and what changes they decided to make, as they provided a graphic of the changes where basically it will be 28 degrees of banking. Remember, they're basically converting from 24 degrees of banking up to 28 degrees of banking. And on the front stretch, it's going to be 42 inches on the front stretch, so they're narrowing the front stretch. And of course, it's going to basically be like a mini super speedway. It is expected that this race will have a double yellow line rule. It's expected to be announced at some point today that we will be seeing the double yellow line rule enforced for Atlanta Motor Speedway, which will be basically mean a mini super speedway. Now, some drivers definitely are basically talking about their thoughts on what this race is going to be like. Denny Hamlin says that he has no clue what he's getting into at Atlanta. Kevin Harvick then also says that he's not commenting on that. He's not getting involved in the situation. And Martin Truex Jr. said that it might be an error Daytona. You can see these drivers have different opinions on what Atlanta Motor Speedway is going to be like. And I'm kind of in that same situation as well when it comes to Atlanta Motor Speedway. I have no clue what the racing is going to be like, because I think NASCAR wants to make it like a super speedway, and it could end up being like a super speedway race, but we really do not know what it's going to be like. And I think, again, there's a lot of frustration from fans and stuff because they feel like a repay definitely was needed. I really never, unfortunately, understood why we needed to reconfigure Atlanta Motor Speedway. I think the racing was overall fine as it was. So overall, in my opinion, again, I understand what they were trying to do. They're trying to make it basically like super speedway racing, but at the same time, in my honest opinion, I don't really understand why they had to reconfigure the track. And I understand the drivers' concerns. Drivers have absolutely a reason to basically be concerned about it. I understand why the drivers are really, really concerned and basically there's a lot of unknowns around this, man. Drivers don't really know what they feel like they're getting themselves into here later for this weekend at Atlanta. So again, we're going to be seeing a new Atlanta Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chase Briscoe. Now, this is reported by Jonathan Fitzgerald, and it was reported that Chase Briscoe says that he nearly got dropped before the 2020 season because Ford funding was falling short. Now, his father and his team were able to meet up a high point, and you look at how successful the Xfinity Series season was and was able to continue that. Imagine if Chase Briscoe, imagine if Chase Briscoe would not basically have gotten dropped by Ford. Imagine. We wouldn't have been able to see what we saw this weekend where he's able to pick up his first victory. We would not have been able to see that. So I'm definitely very, very happy that they were able to figure out a way to get him basically able to find funding and sponsorship for him so he can be able to continue racing. So I think that's absolutely nuts that Chase Briscoe almost got dropped. The fact that Chase Briscoe nearly got dropped from racing is absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy. So overall, in my opinion, definitely crazy to think that Chase Briscoe nearly got dropped, considering the fact that Chase Briscoe could be a driver for long term, could be Stewart-Haas Racing's future driver. You look at the success of Chase Briscoe, I think he's going to be the driver that's going to lead Stewart-Haas Racing to a very long term future. I think we're not done seeing him pick up victories. So overall, in my honest opinion, really exciting news for sure. And not exciting news, but overall, very good to see that at least he was able to pick up sponsorship and he will be able to continue racing long-term here in NASCAR. And I think with Mahindra being happy with him winning, I think he'll be in NASCAR for a very long time. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Quinn Houff. Now, Quinn Houff provided an update in regards to what's going on for 2022, and he confirmed yesterday that he will not be racing in the 2022 season in NASCAR in any shape or form. Instead, he'll be basically selling sim racing equipment, and he did also basically say a personal update that he's having a kid and he is becoming a father. Quinn Houff, in my opinion, was never really a great Cup Series driver. I'm going to be real and frank. Here's the thing, though. I do think Quinn Houff could have been a very, very successful NASCAR Xfinity Series driver, because you have to remember that in the Xfinity Series, he did drive for Precision Performance Motorsports in the 46 car, and he did actually have some pretty decent success. He actually finished 13th with the team at one point in the 46 car and was doing pretty well. Yes, I know that he wasn't really the most successful driver. I'm just going to be frank and honest with everybody here. But Quinn Houff wasn't the worst driver I've ever seen. Now, like I said, he should not have been up on the Cup Series. Quinn Houff should have never been jumped up. He could have had a successful career in Xfinity and maybe could have improved. He did have some good runs there. That being said, though, it's good to see the Quinn Houff's life. He's trying to get it back together. Maybe we'll see him back on the track in 2023. I know there have been rumors about a cryptocurrency team showing up, but overall, it is what it is. At least Quinn Houff has got some good stuff happening in his life right now, and it's very exciting, at least to see that something good is going on in his life currently at the moment. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NY Racing. As expected, NY Racing is once again going to be entering in the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and they will have Greg Biffle once again driving in their car. So far, NY Racing has attempted 2 races so far this season. They attempted back at Las Vegas and also attempted at the Daytona 500. At Las Vegas, they were showing a lot of good speed and potential top 30 speed, but they had fuel pump problems, and I believe those same issues unfortunately came up at the Daytona 500. Now, Greg Biffle, I think, is a very, very talented and a driver who I think could do really, really well with the team and improve their performance. And like I said, one thing that's really, really exciting to see is that we've seen NY Racing show up, and they've had pretty decent pace. They were really fast in Vegas. But like I said, they had major, major fuel pumping problems that really, unfortunately, affected the team. So, again, it's good to see that they're once again showing up. And again, I do hope that we get to see them run a lot of races. They said they're going to run a lot of races here. We talked about this on the channel. So good to see that NY Racing is going to show up like expected, and very exciting news for sure. Yeah, NY Racing is going to show up. Very exciting news for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Trevor Bayne. As Trevor Bayne will be driving the 18 for Joe Gibbs Racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. This is originally not a race that Trevor Bayne was actually supposed to run, but because of how well Trevor Bayne has been performing in the first races that he's been in the car, they are giving him another additional start. Trevor Bayne, like I said, has looked really, really good to start this season. He has been able to finish in the top 5. I think he's been able to finish around the top 10 or top 5 in both race season, and he's led laps and has actually won stages in both races. I expected Trevor Bayne when he came back to be pretty solid. He said he wanted to win at least 5 races. I expected Trevor Bayne to be good. I did not expect him to be this good. Yes, I know that 18 car is an all-star car, but the other 2 guys that have been in the car, that being Ryan Truex and that, of course, being the Drew Dollar, they've not looked like they've been winning contenders. Yes, I know it's an all-star car, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, the fact that Trevor Bayne has come in here and done as well as he did has, in my opinion, deserved the right for him to continue to have an opportunity to continue racing. And I'm very excited to see he's going to get to continue racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And again, another race for him. I actually may pick him to win this weekend because he's looked really, really strong and really, really tough to start this weekend. So overall, very, very exciting news. And glad to see that Trevor Bayne is continuing to race here in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Really, really exciting news in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Formula One race. It was reported yesterday by Adam Stern that F1 is still at least a couple weeks away from formally announcing the new Las Vegas Grand Prix per source, as it decides to try to wrap up negotiations. The event is still tentatively expected to start next year in 2023. Currently, Formula One on their schedule has 2 Formula One races, of course, the American USGP, which takes place at Circuit of the Americas. And then you have the new Miami Grand Prix that's going to be showing up in 2020 in this season, which will be taking place on May 8th or May 9th this year. And now there's a lot of talk about a third race in Las Vegas. And this has been something that's been on the talks and conversation here for the last couple weeks. Why is this happening, and why is there going to be a third Formula One race? Well, the big reason for that is because Formula One has grown their presence in the last year or so in the United States. One of the biggest reasons, of course, is a drive to survive. But lastly, because of a very intriguing championship, is a big reason why we continue to see more of a presence from the Formula One world in the motorsports world. So that's a major, major reason right there. Also looking at it, Las Vegas is an area that definitely deserves a chance for a Formula One race. Now, looking at the future of Formula One and looking if they should expand to any more races, I think that this should be the last race that Formula One does have when it comes in the United States. I think a 3 is the maximum. And the reason is I think Formula One is eventually going to fall off when it comes to the popularity in the United States. I think one of the biggest reasons right now Formula One has grown so much, I think it's a fad. You look at NASCAR. NASCAR had an exponential growth in the 1990s, and then in the 90s and the 2000s, and in the late to mid 2000s, started falling off. So overall, I think that this should be the last race they have, but I think them having a race in Las Vegas makes a ton of sense in my honest opinion, and hopefully we do get to see this announcement soon. It looks like it is coming, though, very, very soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Money Team Racing. As it was reported last night by Adam Stern, that the Money Team Racing is expected to basically make an announcement here very, very soon that it will enter at Circuit of the Americas with basically the same lineup with Kaz Grall driving the car once again. Now, one change that is going to happen is that basically the crew chief, Tony Eury Jr., will not be crew chief in the car because Tony Eury Jr. is supposed to serve a 4-race suspension. And I'm pretty sure that you have to serve that during the races you do, unless, of course, Tony Eury Jr., if they've already served that 4-race suspension, then maybe he will show up once again. But it will be the same core lineup once again. Kaz Grall has been very underrated so far this season. He's driven for a couple teams this year, of course. He's driven for the Money Team this year, and when they Daytona 500 were they able to qualify their way in. And, of course, he's driven for Young's Motorsports, and has had some pretty decent pace with the Young's Motorsports group. And, of course, he's also driven in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Alpha Prime Racing, where he's had some good pace, but has had some major issues in the events as well. Now, looking at the Money Team's opportunity and options of them being really, really competitive, how fast do I think is the Money Team going to be? I expect this team to be a pretty decent team, to be honest with you, because if they're getting Hendrick engines, they're going to have some pretty good pace, and I do think that the Money Team is actually going to be an overall really, really quick, well, not a quick team, but I think they could contend for top 25 or even the top 30. I know those are low expectations when I say that's going to be good, but you have to remember the Money Team is basically Starcom Racing brought up once again. But I think it is awesome that the Money Team is going to show up. Now, we initially thought that Floyd Mayweather was going to be at the Daytona 500. He actually did not show up, so maybe we're going to see Floyd Mayweather show up, but we did not see him. But that being said, though, I do think it's really, really awesome and exciting news that the Money Team is going to show up at Dakota. It's been expected, and it looks like they do have a sponsor, and it looks like they will be ready to go to make their return. Really exciting news for sure. I'm glad to see that it looks like that they are going to be showing up here at Circuit of the Americas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Texas and IndyCar. Now, there's a lot of speculation going on inside the IndyCar garage about the future of Texas Motor Speedway. And it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that IndyCar's future at Texas is unclear after this year. But the series is said to have talk with possible other venues, including the Milwaukee Mile, about potentially going there. I'm going to be real and frank about the future of Texas Motor Speedway. Texas Motor Speedway for IndyCar. Let me explain this. The last couple years, the racing at Texas Motor Speedway for IndyCar has been very lackluster. And one of the biggest reasons why is because of the PJ1 the NASCAR has implemented there. IndyCar still has to race there. And if you go up into PJ1 for these Indy cars, it's basically like black ice and you basically wreck. So it becomes a single groove racetrack and the racing is not really good. On top of that, the attendance figures for Texas Motor Speedway have not been very, very promising. They've been very, very low, and I think a lot of it is because Texas's races have generally not been really, really good. For myself, I've went back and watched like these IndyCar races at Texas Motor Speedway, and they have not been very, very good. Look at a track like Milwaukee Mile. Milwaukee Mile has a lot of history with IndyCar, and they've not raced there since 2015 when Sebastian Bourdais won that race back in 2015. This is a track that absolutely deserves an opportunity to come back. Look at how many people showed up to the Milwaukee Mile for an ARCA race. If an ARCA race can get that many people to show up, I think a IndyCar race could absolutely work at the Milwaukee Mile. So I think in the long-term future with Texas, when it comes to IndyCar, I think this actually will be the last race IndyCar unless they can figure out a solution, because they're trying to find a solution so they can get some grip up there at top of the track. But I don't think any solution that they're going to try to make is really going to work out. So overall, in my opinion, I do hope the Texas future, I think, looks really, really doom and gloom. And it doesn't look like that Texas will have an IndyCar race after the season. But honestly, good run is Texas Motor Speedway. The racing has not been really, really good for IndyCar. I do hope long-term that NASCAR loses their ignitions. It seems like NASCAR is probably, I think long-term, if I'm NASCAR too, we probably should move away from racing in Indy for NASCAR as well. So overall, in my opinion, that situation with Texas when it comes to the future of that, and looks like Texas' future with IndyCar is probably not going to happen much more long-term, to be honest with you. Now we're going to jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about the Phoenix TV ratings from this past weekend, and they're very intriguing. As reported by Adam Stern earlier today, Fox earned a 2.33 rating and 3.991 million viewers for Sunday's race at Phoenix, which is down 9% in viewership from the equivalent weekend last year, which was 4.396 million from the fourth points race at Las Vegas. Nonetheless, Phoenix was still the most watched U.S. sports event of the weekend. Now, a lot of people are going to look at that rating and they're going to look at it as a negative. It is a little bit of a negative. However, there are some major factors and contributors to this. One of the things is Vegas is ultimately going to have more viewership. Look, last week's Las Vegas race, that race got really, really good ratings. It actually was up. So that's a pretty big contributing factor right there. Another big thing to note is that this race, spring race from Phoenix, was up from last year's Phoenix spring race. I actually looked at this up, and this actually was up about 100,000 more viewers, because this got 3.857 million viewers in last year's spring Phoenix race. Yes, it was race number 5, but this race is up about 100,000 more viewers, which means this race was up, which means the ratings were not down. Another big reason why I think these ratings were down just a little bit, though, is because of NCAA selection show. Remember, the NCAA selection show is going on. You've got other sporting events that are going on. And with March Madness starting this week, I think it's already starting this week. If I'm not mistaken, it's starting today, I believe. They got that going on, and you got a lot of people who are going to be focusing on NCAA March Madness, who filled out their brackets, trying to make money on that, and that's a big factor right there. But I've seen a lot of people also complaining about ratings, and that's the thing. The biggest reason why the ratings are so important this year is because of the upcoming TV contracts. That's why we keep talking about these TV ratings, is because of the future of TV contracts, and that's one of the big things right there, is if the ratings end up being really good this year, which, again, these ratings are not that bad. I know a lot of people are saying that down 9%, but you have to remember there's a lot of contributing factors to that. And still, it was still the most watched sporting event of the weekend. Another big thing, probably why ratings are going down in general, it's not that the product's bad. I think people are still watching. I think a big factor is that Phoenix isn't the best racetrack. A lot of people don't watch Phoenix Raceway. Look at the championship race. That race did not get a lot of good ratings. Look at the last year's spring race, like I mentioned. We're still up from that. So we're up in some areas. We're also down in some areas, and our demographics are really, really important. I'm not sure what the demographics are for the 18 to 49 races. I think that's really, really important. But the 1849 demographic range, you got to be really, really good in that. We were up in that last week, so I'm intrigued to see if we were up in that or down in that. But you do have to remember that the NCAA March Madness is going on. You got March Madness is starting this week, and you got a lot of other contributing factors going on. So I know some people are going to look at this as a major, major negative, but there are some outside contributing factors to why the ratings were overall a little bit down. But again, this is compared to Las Vegas last year, which Las Vegas last year was much different in my opinion. So overall, in my honest opinion, that is what's going on with the Phoenix TV ratings going forward. So that's the situation with the Phoenix TV ratings. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we are talking about Boris Said. As it was revealed on Friday or Saturday that Boris Said is officially making his NASCAR Cup Series return, and he'll be driving the 66 for MBM Motorsports next weekend at Circuit of the Americas. The Said head is officially back for the first time in the Cup Series since 2017 when he drove the 32 car in the NASCAR Cup Series for Go Fast Racing, or 33 car, for Circle Sport Racing in 2017. Holy crap, the Said man is back. We've been expecting that he was going to make his return to the NASCAR Cup Series. His sponsorship came into play. We heard that back in November, that it was looking like Boris Said was going to make his return. But now it's officially confirmed that Boris Said is back in NASCAR. This has got me really, really excited because Boris Said, for those who know, is one of my favorite personalities. The guy was also a really, really good road course racer. Yes, I know with MBM Motorsports last year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, it did not go really, really well for him, but there were some outside factors that caused him to not do as well. Of course, MBM Motorsports is not overall a really fast team, and it seems like that team continues to take major steps back. And in the Cup Series, I think he'll do really, really well. I think MBM will have a little bit more pace at a track like Circuit of the Americas. And you look at this next-gen car and the people that have been able to come back and race. You've got Tarsa Marquet, who's going to be racing in the Cup Series here in 8 races with Team Sage Racing if he does get approved by NASCAR. You've got Boris Said making his return to the NASCAR Cup Series. You've got Greg Biffle that's been racing. You've got other drivers that have been treated inside about the next-gen car. Now, overall coming into this race, what are my expectations for Boris Said? My expectations are going to be a little bit low for Boris Said. Boris Said, like I said, my expectations, I think a top 35 would be a really, really good run for MBM Motorsports. I know that's not great for Boris Said because I think Boris Said is a better driver than a 35th place run. But again, Boris Said is a much older driver. Boris Said is going to be the oldest driver out on the track. I think he's going to be around 60 to 61 years old. So he is going to be a much older driver than most drivers currently in the NASCAR Cup Series at the moment. That being said, though, having Boris Said back in this series in racing, I think is absolutely awesome. I know it's not in the fastest car. It'd be nice if he was like in a Joe Gibbs car or a Hendrick car like he was in 2015. But that being said, though, having Boris Said be back in the series is just, it's really, really awesome, and it just shows the next-gen car. You're seeing a huge resurgence of drivers you never would have thought would come back to racing in NASCAR, because I don't think if Boris Said would be back in the Cup Series if it wasn't for the next-gen car. And look at the names like Jacques Villeneuve who's come back and stuff. We may see him back in the future. So overall, I'm very, very, again, I'm super pumped up and super excited to see that Boris Said is coming back into the NASCAR Cup Series. I cannot wait to see what Boris Said is going to be able to do. And like I said, I'm very, very happy and very, very excited to see that Boris Said is officially back in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think he's going to hopefully do really, really well and be able to qualify his way in. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Jeff Gordon. As it was announced on Sunday that Jeff Gordon is going to be returning to the Fox Sports booth at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Jeff Gordon has already been in the Fox Sports booth for many years. He was in the Fox Sports booth from 2016 to 2021, and he'll be making his first appearance in the Fox Sports booth since he last was in there, and will making, I believe this will be the only time he'll be in the Fox Sports booth this season, but he will be in there at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, I think it's cool that Jeff Gordon's in the Fox Sports booth. However, I'm not really looking forward to this broadcast, and I'll tell you why. Jeff Gordon is not overall the most exciting broadcast member. He's not someone that I think does a really, really good job. He was very, very boring. He was good in his first year and had some good moments, but Jeff Gordon brought some good insight. The problem with Jeff Gordon, though, he doesn't get very, very excited, and he's not a big middle ground. He and Jeff Gordon were making a lot of really, really bad jokes against each other, and it seemed like it got really, really old very, very quickly. And the chemistry may click for those two, but Mike Joy's probably going to be carrying the broadcast booth this week. And don't get me wrong, Jeff Gordon's done a great job as working as like one of the higher ups, Hendrick Motorsports now, and of course is one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. But some people are not cut out for doing broadcasting. And unfortunately, I think Jeff Gordon, it really isn't cut out for that. I think what he's doing at Hendrick Motorsports right now is amazing. Look at the future Hendrick Motorsports and what they've got going for them. They're talking about bringing IndyCar program in. They're talking about getting their IMSA program back up and running. They're talking about bringing Kyle Larson into IndyCar right now. They're talking about a lot of good things. But the biggest thing is that right now for Hendrick Motorsports long term and looking at Jeff Gordon when it comes to him, I just don't know if Jeff Gordon is going to be able to do. I don't know what Jeff Gordon, again, I don't know how well Jeff Gordon's always going to be able to bring inside. I know he's been working inside Hendrick, so he probably has some inside the next-gen car, but he hasn't driven inside the next-gen car, and I just don't know if Jeff Gordon will bring a lot of insight when it comes to how he broadcasts racing. Maybe he'll do really good, and it changes my mind, but in my honest opinion, I'm not really expecting much from Jeff Gordon when it comes to him really being in the Fox Sports booth. I'm not expecting Jeff Gordon to do really, really good, and in my opinion, I don't think Jeff Gordon is going to do an amazing job. I could be proven wrong, like I said, and he could do really, really well. But in my honest and sincere opinion, I'm not really expecting much from Jeff Gordon when it comes to being a Fox Sports booth. Don't get me wrong, I can deal with him being in for 1 week, though. It's not like Jeff Gordon is going to be in there every week. I do like, though, that Fox Sports has been rotating, and hopefully Jeff Gordon does better than Danica. I'm going to be real with y'all. Danica Patrick, week 1, I thought was okay, but week number 2, Danica was not anything spectacular and nothing special. She kept bringing up IndyCar. She kept making bad jokes and stuff in there and also did not do a really good job. And it seems like she was kind of butting heads with Clint Bowyer. So at least there'll be some chemistry between the two of them, between Clint Bowyer and Jeff Gordon. But I'm just not expecting much from Jeff Gordon in the Fox Sports booth this year, to be honest with you. So anyway, that's today's Law Motorsports and NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on pages as well. Let's go over that and combo your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about Jeff Gordon joining the Fox Sports booth? Do you think that he will do really, really good at Atlanta or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Boris Said making his NASCAR Cup Series return? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, I'm going to have, most likely going to have race picks out on my channel. And then Thursday or Friday, I may have an update out for you guys on the channel in regards to the future, what the channel is going to be looking like. So be sure to check it out because that's going to be coming here later this week. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time for great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.